Hey YouTube, Simon Dixon here. While the leaders around the world are using financial weapons of mass destruction to combat weapons of mass destruction, my broadcasts are all about making sure that you've got the tools and the understanding and the education to understand how to protect yourself in the current environment. Now, firstly, if you are in a country where your leaders have meant that just your very fabric of freedom is being taken away from you and you are being faced with a fight or flight situation right now, my heart goes out with you. And if you are also in a country where your leaders are forcing you to get the hardest type of education around understanding how the banking and financial system works, and it's leading to the complete destruction of your wealth, then my heart goes out to you as well, because it's completely the luck of where you were born, the country where your leaders are taking certain actions. But what I want from you to get out of this is some kind of lesson. And so in every disaster, in every bad situation, there has to be a lesson that we can take out of it. And if other people around the world can see the misfortune of what can happen when your leaders try to destroy your wealth, your basic human needs, then we've got to look at that, and we've got to learn, and we've got to listen. So if there's one thing that I've been trying to help people understand for over 2 decades now, it is that your money in a bank, your money in stocks and shares, your pension, it is all digital digits in a database that at any moment can be cancelled, can be deleted, and can be changed based upon things that happen, systemic risk events in the financial system, or politicians and leaders wanting to throw around financial weapons of mass destruction at each other. And so if there's one thing to learn, that when you deposit your money at a bank, the bank becomes the legal owner of that money. It is created as a digital entry in a database, and it represents somebody else's debt. And there is only a digital positive balance in your online banking if somebody else has gone into an equal negative balance in their online banking. And so all of these digital entries are simply numbers that exist in computer systems, and depending which financial product you are invested in, it will exist in somebody else's database. And so if you hold your money at a bank, it is simply a ledger that exists as a digital entry, a digital representation of what you think is money in the bank's database that also exists at the central bank's database. And those movements of money through systems like SWIFT is just simply a digital message being sent from one database at the end of a day to another database. And that is all money is. For those of you that have thought that your money is something that you can turn into cash or something physical at demand, are learning through the hard, cold reality of death and destruction that money held at a bank, if you want to digitize it into cash, it does not exist. It is simply a digital ledger of somebody else's debt that exists in this crazy complexity of the financial system that is just represented by somebody else's debt. And so if anything comes from this, understand and appreciate that money that you can own, money that you can spend, and money that has a fixed supply. I haven't just been saying that for over a decade now in order to try and push you into some get-rich-quick scheme called Ponzi scheme or anything like that. It's trying to protect people from the fabrics of how our financial system works. When Bitcoin created a way for you to own your own money and not have it at a bank, it created freedom. When it created a way for you to be able to spend it peer-to-peer, it created a lack of financial censorship. And when it created a fixed monetary policy, it created freedom from central banks. And so even people that hold gold and the traditional hard assets at the moment are starting to realize that when you hold it in custody for someone else, just like the people in Venezuela found out that when you hold that gold in the Bank of England, when your country gives hyperinflation through irresponsible monetary policy in order to push fiscal corrupt policies or whatever it is their goal is, and it leads to the destruction of that currency, even money held in custody cannot be relied upon. So Russia, within a few days, in less than a week, has realized that the 650 billion in reserves is simply entries in databases that can be deleted by other systems. Whether it's money held at a bank, it's a system that can be deleted with those banks. Whether it's money held in the bond markets, it's systems that can be deleted within those investment banks. Whether it's money in your pension, it's systems that can be deleted as soon as the stock market says we're no longer open. Whether it's what you thought was a representation of cash, it's database systems that when you try to turn up at the ATM and withdraw it as cash, you realize that the money was never there in the first place. You also realize that the safety mechanism of the entire financial system, what they call deposit insurance, is simply insurance that covers less than 1% of all the deposits that it is insuring. And so when there is systemic risk events and people try to take out their money, it can't insure it either. So if there is one lesson, I'm not here to fearmonger. I understand that money at a bank is very, very convenient for meeting your short-term expenses. And I still hold money at a bank. But I understand the risk of holding money at a bank versus money where you can own the private key and you can own money, spend money, and have a monetary policy that's reliable, not dependent upon politics, not dependent upon the actions of leaders and politicians. And so if you take one thing out of this lesson, is understanding that the stock market, the bond market is simply the credit risk of a bank, of a country rather, and that is an alternative to leaving money at a bank, but it's a database in another system. It's not a bearer bond. We don't have those anymore. They're databases in other systems. Money invested in your pension is split between the bond market, databases in one system, and the stock market, databases in another system. And what we're finding out is that yields have to go up to 13% in Russia at the moment. The interest rates, in order to encourage people to leave their money at a bank, are going from 9.7% to 20%, representing 5% point in inflation over the next coming weeks. Enter into a hyperinflationary cycle where it's crashing relative to other currencies. So it used to take 75 Russian rupees to buy you a dollar. Now got 120 in a period of just one flick of a switch from a politician's financial decision, a leader's decisions, to be retaliated with weapons of mass destruction, whereby the database of that central bank can immediately be sanctioned. And when more and more people go to withdraw it and to try and change those digital entries in the database into cash, they realize that the money is no longer there, and a run on a bank was exactly the game plan. Now, while I understand that bombing and weapons of mass destruction versus financial weapons of mass destruction are more covert, if you've watched my other updates, the destruction in the end is the same thing. It's people that get hurt as an action of the leaders. And please don't confuse leaders with the general population. The population are just everyday people that are deciding they wanted to buy a house and now the interest rates in order to borrow that money so that they can contribute to the world's largest debt-based Ponzi scheme and create money just like the government and the central banks through monetary policy want you to do. By being a good citizen and taking on more debt than you can afford because you know that the value of that money is going to go down in the future because fiat currencies are designed in order to do that. And you created economic growth in your country by doing what your governments were encouraging you to do. Take on debt, take on credit card debt, take on student debt, take on mortgage debt in order to create that currency in the world's largest regulated Ponzi scheme so that you can have a positive balance in your online banking represented by somebody else's debt so that you could save the economy, and then they can push interest rates up so that the unaffordable nature of that debt is exposed by trying to encourage the savers. So, you know, the last decade or so has all about discouraging savings and encouraging those that take on debt. And with the flick of a switch, politicians and central bankers can decide it's now time to encourage savings, keep that money at a bank because we're scared of the credit risk of the financial system. And with the flick of a switch, they can decide that if you took on debt, we're going to punish you and send you bankrupt so that people can keep their positive balances and we can pay that money based upon a database that the central bank in Russia thought existed that is now being deleted, just like that scene in South Park that we all know, and it's gone. So I'm just sharing with you that although it's not, you know, I'm not trying to create panic here, I'm just trying to help you understand that when I hold money at a bank, I know that it's money at the mercy of the credit risk of that financial institution, where it can be bailed in at any stage. And I'm not forecasting that the entire financial system is going to collapse and everyone's going to lose their deposits. In Russia, they're in that kind of situation. But in the rest of the world, there will be implications. Banks will be exposed to the situations that are happening in Russia as they divest, as sovereign wealth funds divest, as your pension divests as a result of these sanctions. It does have implications, and it will have an impact on every single interconnected financial system. These are the systemic risk events that I've always been warning. You don't know where it's going to come, but you know it's going to come. And when it does come, you learn the hard way that all of these markets are just simply propped up by non-sound money. And for those that think that Bitcoin is a currency just for drug dealers, a get-rich-quick scheme, a Ponzi scheme, I hope that you take these lessons to understand that money you can own, money you can spend, and money that has a fixed supply has a very large intrinsic value in the world. And there's a reason why the demand for Bitcoin has gone up every single year since individuals, companies, countries, and now central banks start to appreciate that the best thing the Russian central bank could do right now, too late, but hold some of their reserves where they own the private key. The best thing that individuals can do is hold some of their savings where they own the private key. And the best things that companies can do is hold some of their savings where they own the private key. And so if there is one lesson that comes from this, it's that when politicians at the blowing of the wind decide that they want to use either a bomb or a weapon of mass destruction, or a sanction and a financial weapon of mass destruction, if you were doing the good thing and taking on debt just like your government asked you to, so that you could get a good education and get a mortgage and get on the right side of the world's largest regulated Ponzi scheme, so that you are not on the wrong side of wealth inequality because the system is engineered to screw you if you don't do that, then you've protected yourself from some of the different eventualities. So I hope you're learning that lesson, and we're going to see a lot more. We've got in Russia, We've got interest rates that are going to have to go up from 9.75% to 20%. Yields on bonds as a result of price crashes, yields go up. Stock markets closing, central banks being sanctioned, and people running on the bank to get their cash simply because they know that SWIFT is the next one to be sanctioned, and then they can't access their funds, their life savings is depleted because they relied upon the system, they put trust in their politicians, and they didn't get on the right side of financial history. It's devastating for some, and as unfortunate and as ruthless as it sounds, you got to make sure that you're on the right side of these financial changes. And that's been my lifetime work for the last 2 decades and the last decade on YouTube, listening to anyone that would listen, trying to spread that to anyone that would listen. It's very important that if you're in a fortunate enough position to be in a country with the privileges that we have, if you're not in the same situation as others in their country, that you learn these financial education, you get yourself on the right side of history, and that any wealth effect that you generate is really an example for others because the technology and the tools now exist. The technology and the tools, I don't think that people are going to lose their money at a bank because it's going to be replaced by a central bank digital currency, as I've been saying for the last 5 to 7 years since I published the first video on that subject in 2016. But you will have to opt in to money that you can't spend unless you're doing things exactly in line with the leaders that may not have your best interest in heart. And you will have to hold it in the exact way, and it can be taken away as a database entry. And the true value in the world's largest supercomputer, that for the last 13 years, the free market has been investing in the world's largest supercomputer where nobody can change the database, where the numbers exist across miners that are verifying transactions and being rewarded with a monetary policy that doesn't change, that we can predict to the nearest Satoshi into years into the future. And people think the proof of work doesn't matter. When we're talking at the country scale now, people are going to realize why proof of work matters. And it's a really, really important thing. You can speculate on all the alternatives if you're blessed and privileged with the opportunity to be able to speculate. But when it comes to countries, when it comes to independence of countries like El Salvador that are using independence from central banks in order to give their people another option and another opportunity, there's only one game in town, and that's Bitcoin, digital hard sound money. And proof of work matters. And we're starting to see the importance of not being able to have influence over these digital keys. And I know I'm simplifying it. I don't want this to be a technology, but use this opportunity to understand that databases that exist in the largest supercomputer, the Bitcoin blockchain, cannot be censored, cannot be taken away, and cannot be influenced by one central bank's policy and leadership and decisions that impacts your financial future. I know that fiat money is needed. I know that money at a bank, when you are on a poverty line, that volatility, when your expenses are in one currency and you can't hold things in another currency. But it's about learning the difference between money at risk at a bank and money where the predictability, the security. And the irony is that's the reasons that people don't get into it. And so I hope that you use this as an opportunity to begin your journey. I know it's a long journey, but you are alive at one of the most interesting and exciting times in financial history. It is absolutely destructive for some, and they need your support. And it's incredible for others because this technology exists. And my hope is that out of this, the wealth effect in one of the largest redistributions of wealth that we have ever experienced, that I forecasted way back in 2009 lecture when I put the Great Depression of the 2020 video up there explaining this system and where it goes. My hope is that a lot of people that have got a consciousness of the importance of Bitcoin and financial education are going to have enough wealth to support the people that are going to get on the wrong side of these trends and have left it to the last minute to start thinking about these things. And so I would like as many people to understand these trends. I'll give you as much as I can in financial education and a play-by-play commentary as everything unfolds. And if you appreciate that, then please do like, please do share, hit subscribe on my YouTube channel, hit the bell symbol, hit all. And my job is to make sure that you got the information to stay on the right side of what comes next. My hope is that we can all do it with peace, love, and unity. You know, my thoughts are with you if your leaders are putting you in a position where the fabrics of your freedoms are being taken away from you, and your country is destroying your financial future, even though you did everything that you were told you should be doing. Just as a result of not having access to the right information. So we're blessed with the fact that the technology exists today for me to be able to communicate with you. We're blessed that the Bitcoin community for the last 13 years have been investing and working on building integrations with the traditional financial system so that you can offboard and onboard. And we're blessed by the fact that there has been, you know, lesson after lesson that in the past it just never would have been possible for you to have access to the information in order to make that change. Do not waste it. Do not waste this opportunity to utilize what the gifts the world has actually given us in technology. And yeah, my thoughts are with you. Peace.